You're listening to China Manufacturing Decoded from the Sofeast Group.
Hi, so today I'm going to be your host, Renaud and Andrew here from Sofeast, and I'm going to talk about Apple and their durability and reliability tests on iPhones. That's sort of an interesting topic to a lot of people who have an iPhone in their pocket, I guess, because some information came out on Twitter, or should I say X, and on LinkedIn, and we'll send the links to these resources in the show notes. And I'm going to talk about this with no other than Andrew Armanovin, who works on reliability engineering and testing at Sofeast. How are you doing, Andrew?
Doing well, Renaud. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think we should start with maybe you could tell us a little bit about your past experience actually working not in Apple, but let's say with Apple, when you were working at AT&T on the carrier side, right? Because you're working on product integrity, product reliability, right? So is this exact same topic, but that was years ago? Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure, why not? Well, right about 2006, I don't know if you recall, Nokia had some issues with Qualcomm in San Diego, California. This is the basically R&D division of Nokia in California. And based on the courts, Nokia lost the case, and court had ordered that Nokia basically, shut down that facility, and that's it. Can't operate there anymore. And so I remember at that time when I was at Nokia, it was roughly August of or end of August of 2006 when we all received a memo from the company that basically the company has to go through a shutdown process for a couple of
Mm.
months, and all employees will be given some options and so forth. And so I put out my resume at the time, and immediately I was approached by Apple as well as AT&T almost exactly about the same time. And then when I contacted some of my friends, I found out that about a week before, at that time, Apple had pretty much gobbled up all of our design engineering team from Nokia San Diego.
Oh yeah.
They had
Sure.
already hired them, given them amazing packages that they couldn't refuse, and they moved them all to San Francisco like pretty much immediately. Yes,
Just to give a bit of perspective, the iPhone 1 comes out in '07, so
correct.
shortly after that. So they were working deep on that first product, and they needed to put all the resources they could. And they saw, oh, in California, there's a bunch of people who are already
Right,
working as a team on this kind of product. Let's
right.
relocate them north a little bit and work here on iPhone 1. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Exactly. So you're right. That was iPhone 1, and that is exactly where some of that reliability engineering technology and testing and so forth comes from the Nokia. Nokia actually invented, for example, drop test and tumble test machines, as you know. So yeah, I do recall starting at AT&T roughly about the end of August, September timeframe. And at that time, within a couple of months, I had created a very special, basically mobile device testing procedure that we called it DIRT, DIRNT. And DIRT was device integrity and reliability testing, basically. This process was based
Mhm.
on pretty much similar in some ways, uh, based on HALT test, as you know, highly accelerated life test, except without investing on the halt machine, which is roughly
Okay.
about 500,000. And so, what I want to
So
get to, yes,
just for the
mm,
listeners, so you're
yes.
saying that they wanted to do the vibrations and things like that, but not necessarily the very fast changes in temperature. Is that what you mean?
Right. Yeah, you could actually simulate some of the halt processes in the process that I wrote, and that can actually do a lot of the processes very similar to what halt would do, except you're right, not exactly to that levels of cold temperature and or uh, you know fast change of the temperature from hot to cold. But the point I was going to make was that once we finished and completed that document, we had to go around to all AT&T's suppliers, including Apple, and have a meeting with them and present these requirements from AT&T side. Basically, AT&T had mandated that if any supplier wants to sell us any mobile phones, they must adhere to these requirements and they must pass these tests. And a lot of those tests were that I saw in the video, we had already required them. So I wonder when they talk about secret tests or what goes on secretly in the lab, some of it has to do probably with this kind of a test because this was supposed to be AT&T proprietary process and other AT&T competitors were not allowed to have this process, which was supposed to be a competitive advantage for AT&T.
Okay. So just for a little bit of perspective here, what we're talking about is when, in this case, a new phone was developed, during the development, there was some validation testing phases where let's say some prototypes had to be subjected to a number of stresses, right? That's really what we're talking about.
Exactly.
These tests are really for, splashing water onto the phone and dropping it and doing, all different kinds of vibrations that would maybe, in this case, in the information that came out about Apple, it seems like they do it to replicate the vibrations of a car and like different types of vibrations, etc., etc. And on the carrier side, because you're talking 2006, 2007, 2008, the carriers like AT&T, Verizon, and so on were, much more in the control seat than they are today, right?
Yes.
Especially with iPhone 1, I think I remember it was only distributed by AT&T. So
Yes.
it was like a partnership, AT&T and Apple together. Okay, but AT&T could tell Apple, which was just a newcomer and no idea how much they would sell and stuff like that, and a much smaller company than today. Okay, there was well, your phone has to, this is the specs, this is the kind of tests that the phone has to pass, and then it's going to be validated and we will distribute it. Because on certain respects, it must have been very scary to them. This like smartphone, with a big glass panel in front, because Jobs wanted the glass, not plastic, from the first generation of iPhone. How easily is it going to break, and is AT&T going to have all kinds of issues because they're distributing a product that lacks durability so badly that there's a big backlash from consumers, right? There must have been a lot of pressure around that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think there was pressure really on both sides. We were worried that we were going to receive product that, we called it our flagship product because we had basically AT&T was the only one carrying it. So it could hurt us, if the product didn't meet the minimum requirements. And on the other hand, of course, I am pretty sure I can just imagine what the reliability team in iPhone, in Apple, what they were going through. They were pretty nervous that, how we're going to make sure that, we can pass these tests. I do recall going to Apple, to Cupertino, and actually meeting with reliability team, doing a very short kind of selective tour of their lab. And I was very, very impressed actually at the time with the team that I met. They were very positive in accepting these requirements. They were planning on a budget of, $500,000 or more to purchase new equipment. And they were very, very receptive and actually not only accepting, but also seemed like it made a lot of logical sense to them that, yeah, definitely good. And then I remember clearly, roughly about 2 to 3 months later, I received an email from Apple reliability manager, the lab director, and so forth. They told me that, Andrew, no worries, we all set. We got all the equipment that you guys required. We've invested roughly about $500,000, and we're going to make sure that we're going to follow your process. Everything's going to be going through. And I was really impressed by that email. And also at the same time, I remember my management was kind of relieved that they're going to go through it, because we were worried that, we did, for example, at that time when we went through introducing this new procedure from AT&T to all their suppliers, you won't believe it, but we had a backlash from RIM at first. RIM, the BlackBerry.
Oh, yeah.
And
BlackBerry.
yeah, right. I remember going to Canada, meeting with their lab manager, and they had a huge lab in there. And one of the things that I noticed right away, they were dropping their phones on a very, very soft wood. I said, well, what do you get out of that? And he had no answer at the time. I said, well, that's just waste of effort, because realistically, no one drops their phone on the soft wood. So why would you even want to test it? So it kind of makes sense to him later on. And he came back and he said, Andrew, just, for the sake of, whether it makes sense or not, we went ahead and followed your process exactly. And lo and behold, we are amazed that your process actually does work much better than ours. And we would like to use yours for all of our carriers, AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile. I never forget my boss telling me over my dead body.
Oh, wow. But wait a minute, the same model was distributed by several carriers, right? So if they were developing one model and testing it against that, battery of tests, and it was validated, then, the other carriers would also benefit from that better product, right?
Exactly. So you might say, we didn't like that idea, but we couldn't control it.
Okay. Yeah, of course you cannot control it, right? So looking at that video that came out, and again, we'll link to the source, where we see, an iPhone gets, splashed in a certain way and dropped in a certain way and so on. And this supposedly is coming out, about what they're doing in 2024. And I guess it's only a very small portion of the kind of test that they do. I mean, I hope, but they still release that, and Apple is a very secretive company, so that there might be some kind of purpose to that. This kind of video doesn't just get out randomly, right? So, what's your take on that? What do you think?
Well, every lab has their own little secrets, right? Maybe assembly machines, jigs, procedures that they have, or some of the competitor projects going on. So there are some stuff in the labs that just you can't show it. But in this case, what they showed, that is really not a secret. That machine is a very standard IP machine for water ingress, and basically it's standard machine for testing all the IPs all the way to IP65, I believe, until you're required to submerge the device in actual water, like a pool of water, and 15 centimeter to 1 meter for 30 minutes. And that will be like IP67, 68. And, but the one that they were showing in the video clearly was more like a IP 64, 65, where, maybe even lower one for the raindrops. And then you move up to next level, IP64, 65, where you're actually having jet stream of water, splash of water. And then finally, between IP65 and 66, you're actually, I think the hose that they had looked like a fire truck hose. That might have been kind of
right.
test a failure just to see what happens.
Yeah, this one is not really standard, right? But the other waterproofness tests that they were showing were they just look like standard off the shelf machines that are out there in the market. I mean, there's really nothing special. Maybe just to show people, oh, look, like it's kind of poetic. I don't know. There's a beauty, there's an aesthetics in the way the phone is splashed or something. I don't know. Yeah, there's really nothing interesting to us about that, right?
Yeah, I mean, if they do have secret machines or homemade machines, they didn't show, so we don't know. But as far as that particular machine, nothing special. And honestly, I have iPhone 11. I don't know if that's waterproof or not, but I get water type of like if there's a drop of humidity or water goes into the connector, I can't charge for a while until it dries up.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know if iPhone 15 is the only one that is going to be completely waterproof, but the other ones haven't been, in my opinion. But anyway, I'm a big fan of Apple and Apple products, and I'm glad to see that they're doing a lot more, you know, reliability work doing there, and then a lot more testing that should be done. I'm not quite convinced that they have resolved the display cracking issue, like just falling off of your table and breaking.
Right. It seems like the users have just gotten used to it, and if the expectations are right, and it's the whole industry actually, it's not just Apple, right, at this point. So if the whole industry kind of agrees that that's good, if it falls from a coffee table, it's et cetera, et cetera. And then if there's a case, well, if people really care about it, they put a case on, and users kind of get used to it, and it's okay. This is not actually a major pushback, right? It seems like there are
Right.
other priorities like battery life and this, the weight of the phone maybe, and things like that are considered more important. So they have probably a baseline, and they might try to improve from generation to generation, maybe, if the rest of the design allows for it, right? But it's more about the market expectations at this point and just aligning with that. More actually, maybe more so than with the actual usage and the proportion of iPhones that get the phone the glass broken, right? That's my impression.
No, I totally agree with you. One of the things that I've been always watching between Apple, iPhone, and Samsung, I noticed that Samsung displays have been designed with the fact that, with the dropping part in mind. If you notice, the top part and the bottom part are really high in the edges, so kind of protect the glass. But in the size of the Galaxy is almost like completely open. It's all glass, right? But in the iPhone, if you don't have a cover, the glass is exposed a lot.
Yeah.
And if it touches just about any metal, if it drops and all of a sudden it touches some metal on the side of the table or chair, that's it. It's done deal. I mean, there's no way you can protect your iPhone without the case. And I have seen
Right.
people right in front of me buy a brand new iPhone and they just like drop it half a meter on the concrete and boom, the display is just shattered. So
Right.
unfortunately, that is one of the things that I still would like to see hopefully improved. Perhaps with some Gorilla Glass, the new versions coming out, pretty amazing
Mm.
product, from Corning. So if that happens, hopefully, maybe John, right, director of engineering, was mentioning that, he wants to create a product that would never ever fail. I think that would come true.
Yeah, it seems Samsung, yeah, is marketing their new products, partly as, hey, the glass is, the display is harder to break and so on. And I remember, I think it was a few weeks, maybe a month ago, someone from the Wall Street Journal actually dropped some iPhones and whatever Galaxy phone, the same way from like, I don't remember, like 1 meter high, 30 meter high, 300 meter high, because they said, look at that flight from where the plug door came out. We talked about that earlier on the podcast
Right.
a few
The
months
Boeing.
ago. And fortunately, nobody died, but some stuff was just sucked out, including some phones. And then people found the iPhones fell on the grass and they were just, perfect. No problem, right? So it really depends
Right.
on what they fall onto, right? And also the angle,
Exactly.
I guess.
Exactly. If it's going
So,
to fall on top of the grass, it's not going to break.
yeah, right. Also in that video, they were showing like a robot arm picking up the phone and dropping it in kind of a weird way.
Right.
Um, that was pretty weird to me. What do you think about it?
Well, Motorola had invented a drop test, basically case a while back. I didn't like that myself personally. I didn't think that really made any sense. And this was, in their mind, was testing, for example, dropping continuously on the counter, like kitchen counter from 10 centimeters, 12 centimeters, like a foot. You come home and you just throw your telephone on top of the kitchen counter, right? Well, my theory was that if you, make the device so rugged that it doesn't break at 1 meter, why should it break at less than that?
Right, right.
Right? So testing over and over lesser drops doesn't add much value. But on the other hand, maybe some of the internal components, eventually show some fatigue and break. Maybe there's some value there, maybe some value in the paint or scratches on the body, or yeah, there might be some value. But the way this particular robot hand threw, and I'm not sure how high it was. Was it about half a meter? I couldn't tell exactly
Mhm.
from the video. But yeah, you're right. It dropped it very strangely. It didn't kind of like drop it square. Maybe it was turning and dropping it like on the side or different angles. The video wasn't very clear.
Maybe they have, I don't know, I'm trying to imagine, maybe they have like a 50 or 100 different kinds of test cases just by kind of trying to imitate how people actually drop the phones because it's never really intentional, right? So it might be
Right.
they are dropped usually in kind of an awkward way or
I mean, like randomly.
yeah, like it slips from the hand, so it's kind of turning on itself or right. So maybe it's one of the use cases where they are actually trying to replicate that. That's what I was thinking.
Maybe that's exactly right. Maybe that's why it looked weird because it would turn it and then kind of like turn it and throw it. Yeah, but again, I go back to Nokia's logic. At the time, they created this 1 meter and half a meter tumble case that actually kind of like rotated 9 revolution per
Yep.
minute or so. And
Mhm.
this, really, once you do like 300 times, one of those drops is going to be most likely similar to one of the users drops. So I think that's a lot cheaper way to do the drop randomly as opposed to creating the robot. But if
Right.
it works and you got the money to do it, why not?
Yeah. We have one of these. We have several pieces of equipment in the lab, and yeah, one of them is this tumbler. So it just basically rotates, and the device inside just go bang, bang, bang,
Exactly.
bang. So it's kind of random, yeah, because they never really get hit in the same way, right? So
Exactly.
that's really key. Yeah, basically,
And it
it
drops,
would break
inside
anything.
that. Yeah, exactly. And inside that box, actually, there's a steel surface. So it's not dropping randomly on a wood. It's dropping on actual steel.
Mm, right. Yeah, quite different. Quite
Right.
different.
I saw
Mm,
also, I think in the video, they showed different drop surfaces. Did you
mm,
notice that? I think they had
right.
like
Yeah.
marble, granite.
Mm, yeah, they were picking one of them. Yeah. Can you explain maybe to the listeners why it actually makes a difference?
So that's a great question, actually. I remember when I was working for LG Electronic, the mobile division, we did run into a problem with one of the, devices that had a glass backing. And we weren't sure. We were worried that if you drop it on concrete, it's going to crack for sure. But we weren't sure how badly it would crack, like really quickly or not. So what we did, we created a test plan and test cases that started from softer surface, a drop surface, and then we
Mm,
basically continued
mm.
increasing the hardness of the surface. So we started from like linoleum, vinyl
Oh,
type.
yeah.
Right. And then we
Right.
moved to
Yeah.
hardwood. Then we moved to steel. Then we moved to concrete. And yes, we noticed
Mm,
that, for example, at when we used the linoleum, no failure at all, nothing cracked.
mm.
With the hardwood, almost absolutely nothing cracked. But when we moved to steel, at certain angles, we had one little crack. But then at concrete, we had like 50% crack. And again,
Oh,
at
yeah.
that time, it was acceptable to our customer and we sold it, no problem. But it was
Mm.
a really good lessons learned from that test case.
Right. Different surfaces are way less forgiving, basically. And
Yes, exactly.
again, you want to replicate the actual use by the users. You want to have an idea about that. It's not just
Exactly.
because you say, well, now this is a glass display, don't drop it. It's out of
Right, right.
warranty. Be very careful. Well, sorry, some users are not going to pay attention to that, right? So,
That's true. That's true. I think the common surfaces that sometimes in the design mode they would do some tests
mm,
would be marble floors, granite floors, steel, concrete, cement, asphalt. These are the kind of things that we used to test just to see what happens.
oh yeah. And is asphalt the worst one?
Asphalt is the worst one because of the granules
Mm,
of the sand that can actually go in between your the edges of the glass. Yes.
yeah, that makes sense. So earlier you said that in the video interview that director from Apple mentioned that, oh yeah, like would be nice to make a product that never fails. That's obviously when you talk about reliability, durability, that's the North Pole, right? That's why you always want to go in that direction, but are you going to reach it one day? Good luck, maybe. So, I mean, in the context of Apple, what do you think? Is this even realistic for them to talk about that?
I think it's a nice target, to beat if you can. You got the money and the technology, and you got the vendors that can provide you with kind of a Gorilla Glass or some kind of a glass that actually is very high impact, doesn't break. I think it's possible, but at what expense, right? So, I mean, I think that you can create pretty much any kind of device. You can even make a device that can go to the moon, right? And be able to handle, for example, radiation if you wanted to. The thing is, it's going to be expensive, and also it could affect the let's say design of the product. I think why a lot of people still don't mind having an Apple phone that breaks the display very quickly. They still don't mind because they love the feel and the look and feel and of the Apple phone in their hand. You know, the weight of it, the smoothness, the certain brightness of the display. They just love that, and so they kind of say, okay, well, you know, I've honestly, I have seen a lot of people who refuse to use an Apple in a case, you know.
Right.
That's because they just want to enjoy using it, and they don't mind if it breaks. They say, "Don't worry, I've got an insurance."
Yeah, right. If you buy it with certain credit cards, you can have an insurance. That's true.
Right.
Or you do like Adrian, our colleague Adrian, who has a
Right.
case. I mean, it's like
Right.
military grade. I guess if he gets a bullet, yeah, the phone would be broken. But short
Right.
of
Very,
that,
very,
wow. Yeah,
very
it
clunky.
yes, right. That's a pretty sturdy one. Yeah, the last topic I wanted to touch on quickly was in the video that director from Apple mentioned, well, it would be nice to 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 make it very easy to repair the products, but we also need to make sure that there's certain durability. Like if they don't need repair so often, then it's not that important that repairing, is very easy, right? Ideally, in the first place, they don't break, which is hard to argue with, right? Would you
Right.
agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good discussion because, and I think that, as you know, right to repair is getting some kind of movement nowadays. Oh, because in the
Yeah.
past, I remember and I recall when I was at Nokia, we had a repair center in Florida. It was like another manufacturing. It was so huge. They were getting like about 500,000 devices broken per month,
Oh yeah.
and they
Yeah,
had
sure.
to triage those, and then some of it was refurbished and kicked back into the sales, but some of it were not, and they had to actually sell it at low cost to foreign countries, Africa and others. In some ways, there's a little bit of money to be made for the company who's doing the repairs. They're charging you a lot of money for those repairs, right? On
Right,
the other
right,
hand, so that's why initially, for a long time, a lot of companies, not only Apple, didn't want you to repair, and they said, well, you try to repair your product, then the warranty is gone, and that's
right.
it. We're not gonna. But I think now, because if you look at it this way, Renaud, if you have to either make a device that is disposable, right? Never breaks, but when it does, you just throw it away. Or it has to be repairable.
Mm, mm,
And
mm,
if it's
mm.
repairable, then why not allow the users, to have some say on it? If
Mm,
if Apple can provide the parts, maybe they can get into the parts business and make money from the parts,
mm,
and
mm.
allow the users do their own repair. Because sometimes repair companies, including Apple and some other repair shops, they really charge arm and a leg for doing these repairs. And sometimes they don't have the right tools. They actually damage other parts of the
Yeah.
device.
Oh, yeah, of
So
course. Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
think there is that movement, right to repair. I think there's some logic into that. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Some
I mean,
may agree. Yeah.
yeah, this would be an entire other episode on that. It's a big topic, so we don't have time
Yeah.
to cover it well. But yeah, for example, the farmers. are pretty unhappy about their tractors from John Deere because it's more and more all managed electronically, and it becomes much more complicated, and of
Right.
course there's more failures when you have more. I mean, it's the same in automotive, right? The number of
And you're in the
failures.
middle of the field.
Yeah, and you're in the middle of the field, yeah. But then you basically have to call John Deere and pay an arm and a leg to get them to come quickly because
Right.
it's the harvest. Like you have to get it running like tomorrow morning, And they're like, well, on my old tractor, I could just, look into the problem, try to, manage some kind of solution, and it would be up and running for a while again, and then we can do the proper repairs and so on at our own pace. And it was much, much cheaper, right? And now it's getting more and more and more expensive, and that doesn't make any sense. So there's some cases where really, yeah, there's a very strong case for integrating the ease of repairing and also the cost of repairing, right? Goes together, and the spare parts and all of that into the design of the product. Otherwise, you're gonna have very frustrated users, and it's gonna come back in your face maybe. So anyway, big topic. But yeah, the main topic today was durability and reliability tests to validate that a new product is basically ready to go and ready to be industrialized and go into production. And also, I'm sure they also do some ongoing reliability tests on whatever, a few pieces here and there every day, plus some when you look at mobile phone assembly lines. I mean, as you know, there's a lot of tests, automated tests right there also that would catch some of the issues that would be really like gross
Right.
issues that would really make users unhappy.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, great. Thanks a lot, Andrew. That was a pretty good discussion. Thanks for sharing your experience. And
My pleasure.
yeah, and to the listeners, thanks for following us, and you will hear from us next week as usual. Thank you.
Thanks again for listening to this podcast brought to you by the Sofeast Group. We're on a mission to provide you with everything you need to manufacture effectively in Asia, including inspections, auditing, new product development support, contract manufacturing, 3PL warehousing and fulfillment, and much, much more across Asia's key manufacturing areas. Visit us at sofeast.com, that's SOFEAST.com, to learn more and get help. If you've enjoyed the podcast today, please do rate, review and share because it will really help others discover us too.